Beyond and hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Dormish, your host for Beyond, episode 561. Beyond is, of course, our weekly PlayStation show, the number one PlayStation show on the internet, according to a chart I just made up in my head. This week, I am joined by Max Scoville.
Thrilled to be here.
And Tom Marks.
Beyond, hello.
Brian Altano is, of course, overseas, venturing far away from us. He'll be back.
He's sick with body diseases and traveling in the fjords of Norway.
To try to get better. But will he ever? You can find out on later episodes of Beyond.
Sea air, is it good for your lungs, or is that just a myth?
It's probably
fisherman's myth.
Probably bad for you. This week on Beyond, we're going to be talking a lot about the future of PlayStation beyond the PlayStation 4 Beyond.
I get it.
There you go. We're also going to be talking about a lot of news, just a quick hits of a bunch of Spider-Man news, PUBG on PS4, a weird new random PS4 Pro SKU that came out of nowhere, Game Award nominees, and then our impressions of Spyro, Fallout, and of course Tetris. If you haven't played Tetris, oh my God, play Tetris Effect.
Yep.
Play it.
Play it.
That's all you need to know.
Play that game.
But before we jump into impressions and the news of the week and all of that stuff, I did want to talk about sort of a weird thought I had about the next generation of stuff as we go forward. So right now, over the weekend, XO18 happened, which is not PlayStation related. That was sort of Xbox Fan Fest. It was their revival of a thing they used to do. And while Microsoft announced that they had purchased Obsidian, and inXile. Obsidian, of course, did Fallout New Vegas, the Pillars of Eternity franchise, the first South Park Stick of Truth RPG, and then inXile is known for the Wasteland series. And then earlier this year, they also announced they had purchased Ninja Theory, who did Hellblade last year, Undead Labs, the State of Decay guys, Compulsion Games, who did We Happy Few, and then Playground Games, who of course has been doing the Forza Horizon franchise, but there are all these rumors they're doing a new Fable game as well. And then they also opened a new studio in Santa Monica, I assume directly across the street from Sony Santa Monica, just for fun competition. But the thing I wanted to ask about all this, so Microsoft clearly is stacking up their first-party stable of developers. And this is obviously a clear forward-thinking thing. This is not for whatever's going to be developed on the Xbox One in the next year. This is clearly a play for the next generation. My question to you guys, at least on the whole, is how do you think this is going to stack up to what we can sort of expect from PlayStation in the future? Because obviously PlayStation's stable of worldwide studios has been such an important part of their identity, and especially the PS4. But a lot of the games they've developed for the PS4 have been sort of long development games. They've taken many years to develop.
They have, and I think that the interesting thing is if you compare going way back to E3, Xbox's E3 compared to PlayStation's E3, Xbox was like you said, they said, here's all these developers we bought. Almost all of those things are certainly not for this gen. These are going to be games. They're going to be making games. They're going to take years to develop. While PlayStation was showing off games that are coming, but maybe a little farther away, and that's it. And so we're looking forward at games like Ghost of Tsushima. I still don't know how to pronounce that correctly. And Death Stranding, and kind of wondering when these are going to arrive. And they could arrive right on that cusp. And then maybe they're both generations. Maybe they're just next gen. We don't really know. But then what does it look like after that? We don't really have a sense. I think it's a really good question. And it's one it's hard for me to kind of get a beat on.
Yeah, I think that Microsoft is definitely getting the message that they need more games.
Yeah.
That was a kind of a resounding thing. And Sony really started off this generation by being like, yes, this is a machine for playing games on. We are investing in people playing games, whereas Microsoft was like, hey, man, you can get ESPN and it's like a cable box and hook it up and DVDs.
And that didn't go so well.
Yeah, that wasn't so hot. But I really hope that Sony doesn't sort of rest on their laurels, because obviously the PS4 is in the lead right now. It does really well. Wonderful library, wonderful, it's kind of the destination for third-party stuff for the most part. And so I feel like the last time Sony was in this position was with the PS2, and then they were riding high, and they were like, yeah, our shit doesn't stink. Let's put out the PS3. Let's switch to cell processing. We're the industry leader. And obviously that came back to hit them. That was that kind of that same hubris that Microsoft went into this generation with, after the 360 kind of ate the PS3's lunch. So obviously there is kind of an arms race going on, but I hope that this is everyone sort of looking at their own paper and being like, how can we improve our own thing without trying to sort of just, cut off the other guy, in the other lane, whatever.
I'm sure there's stuff in development we don't know about, but I think the point you brought up, Jonathan, is a really good one, that these are long dev games. Like, how long was God of War and Spider-Man in these games in development for? And they paid off. They're great, great games, but it does, and what they showed at E3 was also these long development games. So it does make me concerned, I guess, but also there's probably a lot of teams working on stuff within Sony that we just don't know about. It's so much more forward facing when Microsoft buys a company, because then you can immediately go, they own In Exile. In Exile is developing a game for them. Like, you can just sort of assume that.
Yeah.
And then even if you don't know what those studios are specifically working on, you can say, okay, they bought 7 studios. That's probably 7 more exclusive games that are coming. We can't really do that with Sony.
Yeah. I was wondering, in terms of specifically exclusives, do you see this as sort of an arms race of exclusives, and do you think how much does that matter to the bottom line, or is that more for a publicity thing when you're starting a generation? Because you look at like the sales of Spider-Man in its first 3 days, or that first big number that they reported, 3.3 million copies, and it was like the fastest selling PlayStation exclusive ever. Obviously that is a huge deal, but 3.3 million is only a fraction of the 85 plus million people who own it. So while the first party exclusives are super important critically, and I think to define the systems, they don't always equate to the 30 million plus sellers that you see in generation.
I mean, I think it's they're building that ecosystem, and they're also kind of investing in. I mean, we've got a nice little Spyro statue in front of us. At one point, Spyro was sort of a mascot for the PlayStation, and then that just sort of evaporated and went over to Activision. Same with Crash Bandicoot. And I think that Sony's being like, they're looking over at Nintendo with Mario and all of those beloved characters, and being like, oh, if we're really thinking, decades in the future, like, we have to have our own stable of characters. And I think seeing stuff like, like Kratos and Aloy is very smart, to be like, these are our, it's not just games either, it's intellectual property.
Yeah.
I think that the sort of next wave of things after superhero movies is probably going to be video game adaptations somewhere down the line. I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but
we're in this weird wave of Mario, Mega Man, Sonic all have adaptation. The Detective Pikachu trailer came out this week.
It's really good.
It looks really good. We're going to just talk about that for the next hour.
But no, I mean, it's also weird because Sony, obviously they have this sort of this stable of first party games, and they were like, hey, here's the stuff we're working on. And there was this sort of, you get this fatigue where we're like, okay, so yeah, Days Gone, when's that coming out? They're kicking it down the road still. We don't know when Death Stranding's coming out. We don't know what's going on with a lot of other stuff they've shown off. And that's kind of an odd place to be. Whereas with Microsoft, that was very smart to be like, hey, we promise games are coming. We bought studios. And they're not going to be like, all right, In Exile, get to work. We need someone to make a Excel 2019. Like, they're not going to have them making like, productivity software. They're going to be making games. Like, that's what that's for. It's smart because they can double dip with making PC games as well as, Xbox games.
Yeah.
But without kind of letting the cat out of the bag and being like, hey, we've got a great new IP on the way. It's called Scalebound. Hello? They shot themselves in the foot by announcing a bunch of games, and then
that
having
Crackdown
those...
3.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that for next year.
Crackdown 3.
Yeah, what's really interesting to me about Sony exclusives, and maybe this is what we'll see from them, especially with the next gen, is that a lot of their exclusives have been generational. So it was with Insomniac, obviously Insomniac wasn't first party, but you see stuff like Spyro for the PS1 generation with them, and then for the PS2 generation is where they introduced Ratchet, and that did carry over to PS3, but you look at Naughty Dog and it was the Jack trilogy, and then before that Crash, and then Uncharted, and now we're still getting the continuation of Uncharted and Last of Us. So I do agree, I think they're making IP that will last for generations and not just...
How insane would it be if Naughty Dog went back to Crash?
That would be bizarre. I don't think that can happen right now.
I mean, for a while, Activision was the one putting out Spider-Man games, and then lo and behold, suddenly Insomniac's doing it again.
Yeah, now that Marvel... I mean, it's curious to see what Activision will do, and we'll definitely talk, I think, a little later about Spyro and Crash's futures, given Reignited and the Insane trilogy. But in general, for the games that we do know about Sony with Death Stranding, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us Part 2, do you think those will be cross-gen games? Do you think that will be a way to help shore up things with the PS5 generation in the beginning?
I think probably, yeah, because a lot of those games look extremely ambitious, and they're being sort of cagey when anyone asks, is this a current gen game? Is this a next gen game? Some developers are saying, yeah, no, it's going to work on this gen, but it's still... if we assume, it's all assumptions, right? But if we assume that there's going to be a new console cycle in the next 2 to 3 years, and we are assuming that Death Stranding is not coming out in the next year, then it becomes a safer assumption that probably that's a cross-gen game. The other thing that's interesting specifically about it being an arms race is even if it's not an arms race, or even if it is a close race in terms of actual exclusives, there's also the race of public perception, right? This is what we were just talking about of we know what Microsoft is working on because they're buying game studios, and we can assume that. But even if Sony is doing all these things and they got burned by Crackdown and they got burned by Scalebound.
Or Microsoft, you mean?
Excuse me. Yes, Microsoft. Even if Sony's looking at that and seeing Microsoft getting burned by those things and saying, let's play this this marketing a little closer to our chest so we don't get burned like that, where Xbox is kind of on the back foot and can't do that. They have to be aggressive. It looks like Microsoft has more. And even if they don't, and maybe they do, we don't know, but even if they don't, that game of public perception is so important to selling consoles, I feel like. That idea of, wow, Xbox has got a lot going on right now, even if it's not the reality, Sony needs to respond to that in some way, and that's where it does become this sort of arms race of they need to be able to, when we get closer to actually buying these things, show that they at least are thinking about this and showing that they have this stuff.
Yeah, with the PS4, they came out of the gate really promising that stable of exclusives and really emphasizing that party of developers. And I do think we talked a little bit a few weeks ago about like our dream PS5 launch games. And I do think we'll probably realistically see things pretty early in the generation of Horizon 2 and God of War 2. And I think things like that. Do you think, given that Sony Studios, though, have been so emphasized on like building up these franchises, especially in this generation, do you think that that will be enough with maybe one or two really big tentpole new exclusives and then these re-releases of games? Or this is all hypothetical, assuming that they don't have 7 other games we don't know about in development. But do you think that will be enough to possibly compete with what Xbox seems to be shoring up?
I think the re-releases thing is interesting because we're seeing very much the shift of single, SKUs and single, like a game being a singular object versus sort of an ecosystem and games as a service, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
But I could see, games that have like a long tail on them and that have, like for instance, Hitman, the new one just came out, and that's got a bunch of the first game included with it. It's effectively Hitman Season 2.
Yeah.
But that jump between publishers, that jump from Square to WB Games, which is kind of incredible. And that's a game that's meant to be, replayed extensively. And the episodic thing didn't quite work for them. I think when we look back on it, like episodic releases for games is going to be looked at kind of the way like the 8-track was. Like it's sort of between buying a game and buying into a game. And I think that with the sort of cross-platform stuff, they're very much going to try to be like, okay, how do we get you to jump onto our new hardware and convince you can bring a bunch of your stuff with you? Like maybe it's like, oh, you've been playing all these other games already. Like let's bring some of that with you. There are obviously going to be a couple of huge big like flagship things along with that. But I mean, we sort of saw that with this generation with Destiny.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, hey, like, get your, I mean, obviously GTA 5 was like, hey, here, buy it again, suckers. Like buy the whole goddamn thing. We added cats and peyote. Like, but it's,
and people did.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it takes a special game for that though. And like, I don't know how many times people will buy the same game over again is a discussion we're going to have, I think, more and more. But I mean, hopefully like I don't know, there's more of I think it's going to be a more gradual shift than we saw last generation.
I'm calling it now. I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is going to be one of the best-selling games for the PS5 and Xbox Scarlet. That game is going to get remade in 2 or 3 years, and people are going to love it.
Well, because they don't want to let, especially when Red Dead Online comes out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so along those lines of sort of a game that has an online ecosystem and then also having these exclusives discussions, what do you think will matter most to setting up this generation for success in that gen? Because I do think with this gen, Xbox and PlayStation bet on very different horses initially. Like Xbox thought the way to get into houses was the all-in-one entertainment platform. And then PlayStation responded with that and being like, no, we're going to have that stuff on the side, but games is going to be what matters.
And then the Switch was like, it's just games.
You just play Mario. Do you think it will be things like exclusives? Do you think the ability to stream your games will be important? Like, what do you think will be the aspects that will really win over people this gen? And will it just be the sort of a repeat of last gen?
Dude, I have no idea. Honestly, it's the weirdest thing to me right now because we were seeing this. It's changing. It's very, very much just starting to change in the PC landscape. But there's been this weird sort of moment in gaming for the last couple of years. And maybe this is just my misconception, but it feels very much like we've hit a little bit of a plateau in terms of what people are pushing, like the limits people are pushing. You see this with PCs, with graphics cards, where people were sort of just kind of, your 5-year-old system could run every modern game, and now with RTX, it's trying to push that limit a little bit. And I don't know what that's going to be for PlayStation, because clearly people are scared of, or at least apprehensive of, the idea of streaming gaming. So if your whole pitch for your console is streaming gaming, I think that'll blow up in your face, at least right now. Maybe not in a little further down the line. I genuinely don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, like, that's the thing is I've got a PS4 Pro. I'm in no hurry to get a PS5 or whatever the hell it is. I'm like, honestly, I've got an Xbox One S and I don't really see a need for an X, you know, like it's cool. It's sort of tempting, but at the same time, it's like, there aren't enough bells and whistles, and I have a hard time comprehending what those bells and whistles could actually be. And at the same time, we're seeing like, I don't know, when this current gen launched, games on phones weren't what they are now.
Right.
Like the biggest game in the world is Fortnite, and that wasn't a thing you could play on your phone. Like it's kind of crazy that we're seeing, like, they're putting out Skyrim on phones this year. Like Blades is effectively like, you know, Skyrim Lite. And the fact that the new iPad, when they just announced it, they compared it to the Xbox,
the One S,
is kind of like, ooh, Apple's like putting their toe in the games, you know, area. And the whole thing about that is like, you need a phone. Like, you need to get a phone. That's a thing that, you know, you can be like, this is arguably a necessity in 2018, 19, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, a laptop or an iPad is kind of the same deal where you're like, oh, I need this for school. With a game console, less and less, you know, like, I mean, obviously it's a thing people will, you know, dedicate to, but if the advantages or if the sort of advances they're making are going to be like, oh, it's going to be, now it runs 4K, it does higher frame rate, but in order to do that, you have to spend a whole bunch of money on a new TV, then why not go into, you know, PC hardware instead? You know, like it's kind of like the sort of the margin of who console gaming is for feels like it's getting a little bit narrower.
Totally.
And I don't know, maybe VR is interesting, but like,
I wanted to ask about that too. Like, how do you think that will affect the next generation? Because obviously PlayStation hasn't seemed to give up on PSVR in any real way and seems to be doubling down quite a bit recently. Do you think that's going to actually be a driving force for them with PS5? Because again, it's hard to say like, that extra cost.
That feels like if they were like, hey, great news, the PlayStation 5 includes the PlayStation VR 2. It feels an awful lot like the Xbox One with the Kinect added on. And everyone's like, I don't really want that. I don't need that thing in my living room.
I think VR is probably going to continue to be a side thing for a little bit. Yeah. I'm not one of the VR haters. I think VR is fantastic when it works, and I think it's getting better every day practically. It's just still very early on in that technology's life, and especially something like the PSVR becomes, or especially in a couple of years, the future of what PSVR could be is very weird when you have things like Oculus saying, hey, here is a contained VR system in a headset for $200 that you can buy right now. And what is that going to look, how is that going to affect what PSVR is in 2 or 3 years? VR itself is going to look very different in that amount of time.
And also, I guess just on that note, this is totally getting into speculation territory, but with VR being this field of, you know, Oculus, HTC Vive, PSVR, the console landscape has been sort of the same for the last couple generations. Do you think anyone would be crazy enough to try to jump into the console market now? Like, given tech companies' interest in gaming.
Isn't Intellivision making a console or something?
They're trying to do like kind of an Ouya sort of thing, I think. Yeah. But like, I just mean like huge companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon, like the way that they obviously
I feel like they all kind of keep like putting a toe in and then being like, oh, never mind.
Yeah.
You know?
I feel like Facebook, at least with that example specifically, I think they're already trying to do it with the Oculus, but if they were going to do a Facebook console, they'd just make it a PC thing and it would just all go through Facebook, or a mobile thing. I think that there's... consoles lose money, right? Consoles still to this day usually are a loss that you then make up in games. It's
usually a late gen switch where it becomes a profitable thing. Yeah.
Right. So I feel like any tech company nowadays would just say, why wouldn't we just go hard into phone games?
Or you see like Google with Chrome streaming. Like you can stream Assassin's Creed Odyssey in your Chrome browser.
Right.
So yeah.
I don't know. Maybe someone's crazy enough to do it, but I'm not expecting that.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously the next generation is not happening this fall or anything like that. It is a long ways away, but as we see these companies seem to make big moves in sort of future-proofing, I think it's fascinating to keep this conversation going. Yeah. And obviously, as we hear a lot more, we'll be sure to talk about it on Beyond. But before we talk about even more, we're going to take a quick break.
When you first leave the comfort of Vault 76 for the wild world of Appalachia, there's a lot to take in and explore. But before you go charging headfirst into Deathclaw Island, here are a few things you should do first. The moment you leave the vault, you'll have next to nothing in your inventory. Unless you plan to specialize in fist fighting, we recommend picking up some early gear. Turn right after stepping out of the vault to find a dead body around the corner holding a pipe pistol and some ammo. It's not much, but it's a start, and you can also perform bash attacks with your weapon. Take the other route down the stairs to the left past the Mr. Handy robot, and you'll find another body holding a machete. Since ammo will probably be scarce in your first few hours, having a melee weapon is a great way to conserve bullets but still dish out damage to creatures that get too close. We know the itch to go exploring the far corners of the map is hard to ignore, but don't overlook following in the Overseer's footsteps. Her camp isn't too far from the vault and has a cache full of items, as well as a shared stash and tools to build weapons and armor. Take things one step further and proceed south to the town of Flatwoods, and you'll find an abandoned settlement full of supplies, crafting stations, a robot vendor, and more. Completing quests can also give you a wealth of rewards, like stim packs and recipes to craft your own weapons. Whether the prospect of base building appeals to you or not, there's plenty of benefits to having a portable camp. You don't need to get fancy right away, but don't ignore the early essentials. A bed with a frame will allow you to rest and regenerate health without the risk of disease. A Vault-Tec stash will let you dump junk into your camp's inventory, with the added bonus of letting other travelers access their stash too. Finally, a cooking station is a must for cooking up some energizing food before meat and vegetables spoil. Remember that Vault 76 and your camp are the only places you can fast travel to for free, so you can use it as a staging point before exploring a dangerous area, or leave it somewhere you plan to return to later. When killing and looting your way across Appalachia, you might find a US government supply requisition holotape. Check your map for the nearest relay tower, and once inside, access the computer or repair it as needed. From here you can load the holotape and you'll be alerted to an incoming supply drop that will be marked on your map nearby, and seen from afar by the pink smoke rising from the care package. The best part is that anyone can partake in a supply drop, whether they're in your group or not, and everyone will find their own loot. When checking the map, you can see other players by the small yellow dots, but if you see a yellow hexagon, that's the sign of an active public event. These quests will include anyone in the immediate area, which can be joined or left until the event is complete. If the players in the area are successful in completing this event, everyone who has opted into the quest will receive rewards, no matter how much you actually pitched in. Yes, you can just sit around and play Nuka Tapper while everyone else does the dirty work, but maybe try helping out too. Fallout 76 is all about exploring abandoned locations and grabbing everything that isn't nailed down, which will leave you with a lot of junk to haul around. Items like metal cans and pencils can be used for anything from crafting weapons to repairing armor to building bigger and better camps. Just remember that between your own weight limit and the limit in your camp and stash, you'll need to exercise some restraint, or invest in perks that lower the weight of certain types of items and scrap junk at crafting stations into their components to lighten the load. To be in peak fighting shape, you'll want to manage your character's hunger and thirst. All the meals you can craft at a cooking station require either wood or boiled water, so stockpile both by looking for fallen logs to harvest, and find a body of water to bottle up instead of gulping it down at the source. Plenty of prepared meals can heal a lot of damage, even if they aren't as fast working as stim packs, and they give bonus effects too. And that's everything you'll need to start out your journey in Fallout 76. For more, watch our guided tour of Appalachia, and for everything else, you are already in the right place. IGN.
We're back and we've multiplied.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Barrett Courtney, our producer, is here. Barrett,
Beyond.
We
Beyond.
bought a Barrett.
Yeah.
It's our sequel to
Is
We
that
Bought
the
a
sequel
Zoo.
to the We Bought a Zoo?
Yep, yeah.
I think that's
Much
kind of
lower
a
budget.
downgrade.
I'm
We
playing the
rented a
role.
Barrett.
I'm playing the role of Matt Damon, so this is going to go very well.
Oh, I hate that.
Barrett, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, happy to take you out of the control cave every now and then. Have you talk about some weird PlayStation stuff.
It is true. I do live in a cave.
Yes, it's very true. Sad, but true.
What are we talking about today?
We're going to be talking about our impressions on some games in a little bit, but before we get there, we have a lot of news to discuss. Wanted to just jump around because obviously always as the show happens, even though we recorded late last week, news broke after that.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure we can capture everything that's happened the last week or so. So we'll go through it, starting off with the fact that PlayStation kind of released a new PS4 Pro and didn't really tell anyone about it. So Eurogamer put this new console through the test. Essentially what happened was there's a new PS4 Pro that released with the Red Dead Redemption 2 bundle that you can get. It's not like a special edition console or anything. It doesn't have Red Dead branding on it in any way. But essentially it's a new model that has a different power supply on it. And so that causes a reduction in the noise it makes.
And so, like to give context, like the PS4 Pro, what it usually had was kind of like the thicker, like prong going into as the power supply, but now it's the Xbox One X power supply.
Yeah, it's the standard like figure 8 style input that's used on the Slim, the Xbox One, One X, and then older PlayStation 4 Pros, as you said, use the 3-prong adapter. And so they also introduced sort of like a slightly quieter, I think, PS4 Pro with the God of War bundle, but this is even supposed to be
even quieter.
So they stealth launched the stealthiest console
This is
yet.
the solid snake of consoles.
Damn it. So yeah, they totally did this with the PlayStation VR 2 last year, where they're like, hey, we made a new PlayStation VR. It's got built-in earbuds and a smaller cord and HDR.
All of these really cool quality of life things, and we're not going to talk about it.
You've been asking for. We're just going to put that out there with a bundle and not tell anyone, and then you're like, what? I don't know.
They've done that with their handhelds in the past too. I forget if it was the PSP or the Vita, but there were like 3 iterations of one of them. In a row that just made things better, but they didn't really tell anyone about them.
I mean, they've been doing that a lot just recently. Like even the search function for PSN was just like, you know how terrible this was for the last 4 years? It's way better now.
They want to hide their shame.
And exactly. It's so
do you
weird.
think that's what it is? Do you think it's them being embarrassed and just saying, it'll just be better from now on? Or do you think it's just they don't want to make a big deal out of something they see as small?
I think it's probably just not worth the trouble marketing-wise. Like, I don't think there's any good outcome here. Like, if they make a big publicity thing about it, then people who already shelled out money for a regular PS4 are like, they're like mad about it. And then people who are in the market for one are confused about which version to get.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just better to be like, it's just out there. I know that even going back to the PlayStation 1, there were like different iterations of the SKU of the sort of serial number. And there was like the earliest ones you could buy like, I mean, ask me how I know this. You could buy like plug-in mod chips off of eBay that would play like burn games if you jammed a pencil in the thing to hold the.
How do you know this,
Max? What were the olden days like?
Oh boy, you could take your games out and put them in the CD player. That was this thing we used before Spotify. It was wild. But no, like there was that, and then I remember like same deal with Vita. Like frequently they use it to sort of combat piracy, where like earlier versions of the Vita you could hack them and then put a bunch of downloaded games on there. Like Transformers the movie.
That's my favorite.
That's the go-to.
Yeah, I'm gonna pay money for that. Sorry, Transformers
the movie.
I hope that little franchise pulls through.
It will someday.
But no, I mean like that's always been the case, and it's kind of weird to see it with sort of this because they make a big fuss about the iterative like properties of like, oh, it's the PS4 Pro, and then they're like, but here's like the PS4 like Pro 0.5.
Yeah, I feel like it was a big deal, at least for the IGN audience. The article itself and our coverage of it did pretty well, and I think that's more of a side effect of just the way we talk about games now versus like when they were doing that with older systems. It's just like every PlayStation fan can comment on that, can read about it, can look at that, whereas in the past it wasn't such a noticeable thing.
Real talk, real quick. I will take a 5 decibel louder PS4 to keep my 3-prong plug. I love that thing.
Really?
I use it because it works on my PlayStation 3. It works on my monitors. It is a universal plug
Weird
for me.
PC man.
Yeah. If I lose that plug, I have to unplug other things if I'm swapping the PS4. It's just a big
it gets
deal.
quieter.
I disagree though, because I have an old Vita charger where like the Vita plug end is all frayed, so I can just unplug the figure 8 out of that, and I have a spare PlayStation 4. This is all hypothetical. I'm not going to buy a new PS4 Pro just for the sake of the power supply.
Yeah.
It could also be like a supply and demand thing. Like maybe it was cheaper to get like a newer part, and they were like, let's buy some of those leftover Xbox One X cables.
And just happened to like help them out in that very specific set of loudness.
For reference, if you're looking for this specific PS4 Pro in the holidays, its serial number is CUH7200. That would be the model it is.
So all the moms and dads out there looking to buy their kids the presents,
look for the 7200.
7200.
See you at the store for a CUH.
One of those weeks. Talking about the new, quieter PlayStation.
Oh, we have more to go through. There's more. PUBG is coming to PS4. PS4.
Very
PS4
timely.
Pro. Yeah, finally.
Yes, but are there going to be Suicide Squad skins that I can buy for $45?
There will be if you pre-order Nathan Drake desert outfit from the Uncharted series. You may not know, and
Now they
Ellie's
got me.
backpack from The Last of Us to use in game.
They got me, man. They,
We'd like
they
to
really
see the
did. I'm
pictures
convinced now
or high-res
to play the
assets from the
game
show.
that's no longer irrelevant.
You look at the video,
yeah.
you can probably see that we have images on the screen of my paper.
Beautiful, beautiful
Yeah, I didn't get
images.
this B-roll
Little bit of
early
glare.
enough, so.
High
They are
res.
nice skins. And
They
it's
are cool.
interesting, though. It's funny because you're right, Barrett. The game is sort of, since Call of Duty and since Fortnite, has totally fallen off.
I did want to ask about that in general. Like, obviously, Fortnite has dominated, and now that it's finally cross-play, that's less of an issue.
Yeah,
with
and
it
like
on
Black
PS4.
Ops is like on all the consoles.
Blackout is doing very well.
Yeah, exactly. And so and that was sort of the like Fortnite had its like very specific audience, and there was always kind of the war between PUBG is the hardcore people and the Fortnite are the millennials. And then Call of Duty finally came out, and it was that like kind of nice in between where there's silly shit like zombies and all this whatnot, but it's actually like a kind of hardcore mechanical wise like shooter. So I just don't understand why PUBG is now just coming out.
Is it,
and it's also fun fact, December 7th, same day Smash Brother comes out.
Oh,
The
It's
perfect.
a terrible idea.
and it's for sale, right? You have to buy it.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to
yes.
buy
Not, so wait a minute. So you're telling me I could get the free game that's the biggest game in the world, and I could play as maybe Thanos. I think that's a limited
That's
time
not
offer.
happening.
Yeah, that's not
But it had
happening
Thanos in it, or I could pay money and get a game that's
With-
kind of like that.
You can
With
currently.
Harley Quinn and
but
the
it's
Joker.
got the Joker
Yeah.
and Harley from 2016's The Suicide Squad.
Was that 2016?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Oscar winner Suicide Squad.
Oscar
And
winning Suicide Squad.
You'll be able to play as a Niffler now in PUBG. They're tying into Fantastic Beasts. That's not true. Yeah, it's available in 4 different SKUs. The first base one is $30 US dollars, and then they have a Looters Digital Edition, Survivors Digital Edition, and Champions Digital Edition, which go up incrementally. Yeah.
This is so sort of like too little, too late. I mean,
Yeah.
That's the story of PUBG, though, because the thing is, the reason Blackout was so exciting is because it is essentially PUBG made by a developer who can do things quickly at a
and know
high
how to
budget.
run like a game well on a console. That was also the biggest thing.
That is
that,
a big thing, yeah.
and
It was not-
Has
did
that
not
even
run
been
well.
fixed? Like for the most part on
It is
Xbox.
You can find out on
significantly better than
December
it was.
7th when it's on PS4.
do you guys remember DayZ? Remember that little game?
No.
That sort of
Yeah.
spun off into becoming PUBG, sort of.
Yeah. Maybe.
I remember when they first showed off the UI for the PlayStation 4. One little detail that jumped out at me was the username for one of the people was Daisy 100 or something, and I was like, oh, they're gonna bring Daisy to PS4, and then it was announced that Microsoft had console exclusivity for that or something, and it wound up not happening, I guess.
It happened a while later. I think
It
it
did
did eventually come.
Did
yeah.
it ever? I don't even. Yeah, it
Yeah.
kind of evaporated, and people moved around and everything. But it's kind of weird that we're at a point where battle royale stuff is so big that it's there's not really any space for you got. I mean, it's much like battle royale. You kind of have to kick ass or get out of there.
Permanently. Yeah, I'll be curious to see. It is weird. There were a lot of leaks leading up to this announcement where PUBG was officially. There was an Amazon listing, some other things. So I think a lot of people were thinking it was going to be a Game Awards announcement, and if it
Gotcha.
was, it won't be anymore because they've officially revealed it. But along those lines of the battle royale thing, just a quick thought too.
I'm imagining Jeff Keighley just at the award show, and he's like, world exclusive. PUBG is coming to PS4. He totally just missed
didn't get
this
the memo.
announcement.
Yeah.
And
One
it's
person.
With that whole sort of battle royale thing, I do have that question of too little, too late, or just coming too late to the party. Do you think that'll be the same for Battlefield's battle royale mode that's coming? Do you think with it launching so many months after Blackout?
No. So I think that because Battlefield does have obviously there are people who play Call of Duty, there's people who play Battlefield. It's got its existing user base.
Yeah.
Plenty of those people are mad at this version of Battlefield for their various reasons. I was really into Battlefield 1. I'm kind of lukewarm on this one. I'll probably check it out. But the thing is Battlefield's been doing vehicles a lot longer than Call of Duty has.
Yeah.
That's a big part of Battlefield. They're used to making big, huge open maps. So there's a difference in kind of the game philosophy. So if anything's better suited for Battle Royale in terms of big AAA shooters, it is hands down Battlefield over Call of Duty. Whether or not they actually manage to stick the landing, being late to the party is another story.
Yeah,
entirely.
it's definitely because they're also didn't they delay the battle royale mode?
Yeah, specifically that mode isn't coming until early next year.
What
Yeah,
I
they
will
wouldn't.
say,
They wouldn't release a game that wasn't fully polished and finished. Who do you?
No one's ever done
Yeah.
that.
what I will say is there could be a tortoise and the hare sort of win for PUBG here. PUBG has been around for a long time. They develop and update that game consistently, but very, very slowly. That's kind of that's what Fortnite exposed about PUBG was, hey, you can update a battle royale every week and people will be into it, and if you can maintain that pace. And PUBG can't maintain that pace. Yeah. So there could be a tortoise and the hare thing because Call of Duty and Battlefield are, and no offense to Call of Duty or Battlefield players, at all intended, but
Send your hate mail to Tom. Direct.
those games are used to shorter attention spans in that a new one comes out every year. And we still don't have the answer to that question of what does Blackout look like this time next year?
Yeah.
What does Firestorm look like? I think that's the name of the Battlefield one, this time next year. And honestly, in a year, those games could be abandoned or moved on to the next one or whatever, and PUBG will still be trucking. I don't necessarily know if that means that's what's going to happen, but it could be that that's a world we live in.
The other thing is also like with PUBG and with Fortnite. I mean, sort of different animals there, but like this is games as a service. You know, with PUBG, you buy the game once, and then
You have it.
You're updated. That's it. You know, whereas with Battlefield, like you're gonna buy Battlefield 5, 11 months from now, it's gonna be, you know, $8 with all the DLC or whatever, and then they're gonna have a new one on the way. Or, you know, Battlefront 3.
And there have been like theories about with Battlefield and Call of Duty of if this is like if Blackout is just this one mode that they kind of just update. And like they keep that as a games of service, and then kind of like release new multiplayer modes or whatever. And I actually thinking about it, I think that it'll be interesting to see like a battle royale have a new edition every year.
Blackout 2.
Yeah, it's like it's gonna be like that because I think they're not gonna make major changes to like if they do like themed changes to the map. I can see that, but like they're gonna make an entirely new different type of map for the next year's Blackout. And
If
stuff.
they
And
do it all, I mean,
yeah, and that's a weird question of like how do they survive in an industry or like in a genre that's mainly perceived as a games of service when they're kind of always releasing a new game every year. So
it'll be really interesting to see, like exactly you both were saying, how these games look in a year from now. It's okay, Barrett. You did your best.
speak words.
I believe in you.
I did 2 extra lives in the last week. I'm sorry.
How you're alive, I don't know. Of course, we'll be.
Extra lives. Hey, I'm not high fiving you.
That definitely was an intentional setup. Moving on to some of the other news of the week. Spider-Man's next DLC, Turf Wars, has a release date. We kind of knew this last week because the game itself in the main menu accidentally revealed the release date.
I was really hoping this one was going to be about the tennis turf.
It is not about the tennis turf.
Damn.
I'm sorry, Barrett. It is called Turf Wars. It releases November 20th, so right before Thanksgiving in the US. And it focuses essentially on Hammerhead, the villain who, spoilers going into the Heist Spider-Man's first DLC, Hammerhead is first teased in that DLC and sort of becomes seems to be...
And to be fair, he's teased on like the first 30 seconds.
Yes, yeah, it's pretty obvious that he's in there. But in addition to what there will be like new missions, new challenges, new trophies, sort of what they promised with the first DLC, there are another 3 new costumes. They include the Iron Spider armor suit, the Spider Armor MK1, as well as a new animated suit. It's called the Spider Clan suit. It's pulled from the Marvel Mangaverse comic books.
And just with it's the OG like Iron Spider from like the Civil War comics.
Yes, yeah.
The Spider Clan one is so cool looking.
But like
Very
it's so
into it.
weird because it's not like a very like I don't know like definitive looking Spider-Man costume.
It's not
like it's cool looking.
It's not as
Got a
nearly
short sleeve shirt.
I do like it. Like
Short sleeve Spider Man.
I think it's going to be really fun.
Max
to
is
mess
not
around
into
with.
it. He's not
I think
into
I
the
vaguely
anime.
remember that. Like when they did that, I feel like he's supposed to be like have an entirely different anatomy though. I really wish that it was like so much that game is depends on like on the actual like collision physics and having like Spider-Man's body.
Yeah.
I just would love Peter Porker. Like I don't care if it
Yes.
breaks the game. Like I
Yeah.
love like when you put in like you know like GTA 5 cheats and you're like, "Oh, it's the pig riding a motorcycle," and it just like, you know, bends its leg around. Like I don't care. Like charge me $6 and I will get a Peter Porker thing that
I'm
just leaps
thinking of-
around and clips through buildings.
Thinking of that, they're probably going to do some sort of Spider-Verse integration, I would assume, with December. Like they might as well use a suit from Spider-Verse in the game. But first of all, so those are our opinions on the suits real quick. So yeah, the story will focus on Hammerhead having declared war against the other Dons of the
war?
Magia. Yes, Turf War. Wow. And will be utilizing
The war
equipment.
against the tennis.
He'll be utilizing equipment that was left behind by Sable, so you'll have to fight
cool.
Sable.
Instead of actually
sorta
making
soldiers.
new enemy types, we'll just put these enemy types with Sable guns to make
Hey
them
Barrett,
seem
why don't you
harder.
make a video game, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, Barrett. So Barrett, I know you.
I don't have a retort. I almost did, but I don't.
Barrett, I know you played, and we'll get to that in a second. Have both of you played the first Spider-Man DLC at all?
No, you were saying that it felt sort of like the first part of sort of a story that I should maybe
Yeah.
save it
Yeah,
up.
I recommended people like who haven't played the first one yet to wait until all 3 are out, just to kind of. I think it might be a little more satisfying to experience them all back to back.
Yeah.
I've played Heist. I haven't played the base game though.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So you enjoyed that.
That's a joke. I'm waiting.
Who invited you?
Who are all these violent, colorful men?
It's curious to see. So my long-standing theory has been that they were going to delay DLCs 2 and 3 just because it seemed like such a crazy schedule of releases. Obviously, they have stuck to it with 2. Do we think that 3 will stick to it and come out in December and wrap this all up as a nice little bow toward the end of the year?
You and Goldfarb are so animate that like that is going to get delayed.
I think they will want to like take their time and care, especially with the final act of this. And if that means it gets pushed by 2 weeks, it means it gets pushed.
I think it comes out in December.
Okay.
Yep.
But how did you feel in not just the fact that it was the first chapter? How did you feel in general about the DLC? And are you looking forward to the second DLC chapter?
I really liked the first chapter, but that update in general in that week where they updated the New Game Plus and the Ultimate mode, and then they added a whole flurry of new bugs to that game that did not exist when the main game originally came out. So that was a little frustrating. But the new DLC is really fun. It adds like kind of like the main game, it adds like a new layer of what they're building for Spider-Man and in a really cool, creative way. And
It's a new lair?
Yeah.
Like a spider lair?
Yeah.
What kind of bugs did they add? The beetle?
Cockroaches?
Yeah. The
scorpion? The spider slayer?
Max, I'm too tired to process what you're doing right now.
Well, that's just Max is throwing things at you, and you're like, yes,
those things.
Yeah.
But I am excited for this one. I'm excited to see like what their main interpretation of Hammerhead will be, because again, he was only really teased in the first one. So, and then I'm interested to see where this all comes into in the third one.
Silver lining.
Yeah, we kind of have a hint there of who that'll tie in.
Well, and especially the fact that Sable...
Quicksilver.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just a Silver
Surfer. Yep.
They go into the cosmos.
Incredible if that's how it just goes from Hammerhead, a local crime boss, to Silver Surfer.
Yeah,
That'd be
dope.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'd be totally down for that.
They're not going to do it.
Like video game stories have taken bigger leaps. Like
Yeah.
they're like, all right, whatever.
be
It's
good
just
with
like
that.
a physics glitch. You just fly into space. And you're like, whoa!
And then a cutscene starts.
Just have to
Yeah.
do like a quick time event against Galactus. And I'm like, all right.
I'd love that.
Wrap things up.
It will probably turn instead into Silver Sable, but we'll find out more about that as it comes, and stay tuned to more on Turf Wars from IGN, of course.
Turf Wars.
Turf Wars. Moving on, the Game Awards Game Award nominees have been announced. God
Wait,
of
what
War.
was that again?
The Game Awards Game Award nominees have been announced. The games up for awards at the Game Awards have been announced.
Stop saying that.
Certain games will be given awards in December. Those awards will have been revealed, at least who will be nominated for those awards for the games that will be available currently and in the future as part of the Game Awards 2018. God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2 tied for the most number of nominations.
Wait. Slow down a second. The Game Awards is giving what to what? They're giving awards to games?
Yes. Breaking news.
Man, that was great.
I like that I just broke you there, Max. God of War and Red Dead Redemption 2 were tied for the most nominations for this year. Woo. They are both nominated for Game of the Year, as is Marvel's Spider-Man and also Celeste. Shout out to Tom
Yeah.
Marks. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Shout out to Greg Miller. And Monster Hunter World. Shout out to Casey DeFreitas. Those are all the Game of the Year nominees.
I understand where they come, because I was looking at kind of like the nitty gritty awards and whatnot. I understand that it just came out, but I am a little sad that Tetris Effect was not nominated for amazing sound design or best sound design, because
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
We'll be talking about Tetris Effect a bit more this coming episode.
Damn right.
Oh, yeah. But before we get there, the Game Awards that are giving out awards to games. Also, for best performance, I just wanted to put in a slight nod. Both Christopher Judge, who voiced and performed as Kratos, and then Yuri Lowenthal, who was Peter Parker in Marvel's Spider-Man, have both been nominated.
And also the dude who played the robot detective.
Brian Deckard as Connor in Detroit Become Human has also been
I
nominated.
did like that character.
Yeah. And also for the VR AR category, all 5 games are available or will be, with Beat Saber coming to PlayStation Plus. I'm trying to find them amongst all of the nominees. But also, I believe 3 of the nominees were PSVR exclusive.
Ooh.
It's a good year
Is
for
Astrobot
PSVR.
on there?
Astrobot is on there. Firewall is on there as well.
What about Moss?
Moss was on there as well.
Ooh.
Yeah. So good year for PlayStation exclusives all around. Obviously, these are not representative of what IGN's Game of the Year nominees and awards will be. We will have more information for those as they come about. But it's nice to see the PlayStation exclusives so well represented in these awards. Moving on to things that were maybe not nominated because they came out a little too late, but we're going to talk about them. This is
or maybe that they're just.
How dare you? There is a crazy release week happening right now. A few of the things that are coming out this week. Hitman 2, we won't touch on too much, but that is also out this week. One of the ones I want to get to, as you may have been able to tell by what is on the table in front of us if you're watching the video.
Crash
Spyro.
Bandicoot. Oh.
Barrett, get out of here. Spyro Reignited Trilogy is available on PS4 and Xbox One. I reviewed it. I gave it an 8.5. I called it great. I think it is an awesome, wonderful collection that really elevates those original games with such a brand new, gorgeous, colorful style. And I know all of you have had a chance to play it, and I want to hear your thoughts.
It's just pure joy.
Yeah.
I just got into that game, and I wasn't even a huge Spyro person when I played the first game a little bit, and then I never played 2 or 3. And I got into this one expecting. We've seen a lot of HD remasters of stuff, and I was kind of expecting something sort of clunky but cool. And this just feels really lovely and polished and fun and friendly. And you gushed about this beforehand that all the dragons that you save are all these unique, beautifully designed dragon characters.
Yeah.
And it just is. There's so much heart in this game, and honestly, I feel like it kind of holds up. The actual gameplay feels a little dated, but it doesn't feel absurdly so.
I was going to say, like, if you told me this was a brand new game that was just aimed at, younger gamers, I'd be like, all right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Like, it's really, really tight.
It's nothing revolutionary or anything, but it's definitely... It's just a fun game.
What's really interesting is they had to recreate all the gameplay from scratch. I've talked to a few Toys for Bob developers.
That's nuts.
Whereas with Vicarious Visions they were luckily able to use Naughty Dog's like the wire mesh sort of versions of a lot of the levels. They were able to stick to some of the original code. Toys for Bob didn't have any of the original code from Insomniac Games to use for this. They did get the blessing of Insomniac and everything, but the code wasn't available to use. And so what they did was they created this program called Spyroscope, where essentially they used a version of the game, put this program into it, and it tracked all of the math going on for like how high a jump is, where enemies are placed, how a gem moves.
Amazing.
And
So they virtually rotoscoped or mocapped a game.
Yes,
sort of?
yeah, and they basically recaptured, and that's why they were able to build everything so properly into scale and have his mannerisms and his motions make so much sense if you were a longtime player.
So having been like a longtime player, you have that muscle memory of sort of how things should feel.
Yes.
How different would you say it feels when you jumping into it?
It feels nearly identical in the sense of like his glide and his charge moves and the length of the fire. I had actually forgotten his fire is pretty forgiving when you spit it at enemies. There's a pretty long distance, and so I forgot that. And so I was getting hit by a lot of enemies early on because I realized, oh yeah, you can still be further back, and that's how it was back then. And so they really retained a lot of that. The only real big difference, and it's both a good and a slight bad, but not really, is that these games weren't playable with analog sticks before they weren't designed with analog sticks in mind. So the camera was on triggers for the original PlayStation.
It was the bumpers. It was the L1,
bumpers.
R1.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah. And the movement was obviously stuck to the D-pad. So here you have a lot better movement with him, and you can also really angle the camera better for a lot of jumps. So that takes
still kind of jarring though to play it on. Like you and I, you had me play the first one for the very first time for a Let's Play earlier this year.
Yeah.
And like after playing it for a bit, I was kind of able to get used to like the L1, R1 bullcrap PS1 controls, and it was jarring to go into this and be like, oh god, like the joystick actually works and it moves properly, but I'm trying to mentally get used to it, and also just because now everything is very beautiful, like the depth perception is off for me now. Where like I was able to get used to those dumb sheepdogs, and now I'm not I get a little too close to them, so they jump on me, and I'm like, damn it.
But it is nice. You do lose a little bit. Like some of the jumps I thought were easier now because you can do that. But on the whole, it retains that muscle memory super well. Like it kicked in. It was wonderful.
It's also really nice to play right now. Like I've been kind of surprised at how much I'm enjoying it. And I think it's because it's like a pretty simple video game.
Yeah.
Like it's not Red Dead Redemption. It's not like a huge, massive, sprawling world that's full of serious ethical choices.
And I would say that this gameplay is more intuitive than Red Dead Redemption.
Okay, Barrett, calm down. You make a video game.
It's easy to dip in and
Apparently,
out
is
of,
the
right?
show you just make a video.
It's easy to like just jump into a level, grab the collectibles, and go to
Yeah.
it and just take a break. You know, if you want.
It's also weird. Like I played a lot of Crash Bandicoot as a kid. Like I was into that, and it was also like that was kind of when I was sort of I was like I could also play Metal Gear, Doom. Like I was like I'm trying to be like a grown up, and I was like 12 or whatever. And Crash Bandicoot is still very rigid in how it plays. Like it's much more. I think it has more in common with like a 2-dimensional platformer than like a proper
especially
3D.
the first one.
Yeah, exactly. Like you're kind of on like set tracks. This is so much more of a game about just like kind of floating around and jumping and exploring and chilling out, and just it's like very forgiving. And I sort of wish that I'd played like Spyro more as a kid. Like I wish that I'd checked it out and gotten into it. And I take back all of those things I said about Spyro on all those forums.
Yes.
You don't need to go look them up. I take them back. I didn't mean any of those things that I said about Spyro the Dragon or any of his friends, especially that kangaroo. I don't mean those things.
How dare you say that about Sheila?
Yeah, I would say that's one thing that does. That there are some of the characters are just like a little bit too sexy in 2018. You're just sort of like, what are you doing over there?
They upped them a little bit. I mean,
kind of Disney afternoon things.
Going back to the dragons, the dragons in the first game that they've recreated, there are some buff dragons in that game. I think.
How come they're all like men?
Where are the women dragons?
They're like, what is up with that?
I don't know, but
did you ask any of them about that?
Where are the mother dragons? No,
It didn't weird me out until you said eggs, and now I'm very weirded out.
It's like a Jurassic Park scenario where like life finds a way.
Yeah. Life finds a way.
So my whole thing about this is the fact that they put so much into fleshing out the world. Like they obviously used what Insomniac created, but they've given so much more detail and life and kind of like lore to a lot of it and of who these characters are. Like they must be able. You could make a Saturday morning cartoon of Spyro now. Like there is the Skylander show, but specifically a Spyro show or something like that. I don't think this is the end of Spyro now. Like, do you think we're going to see new Spyro, new Crash, especially given the warm reception to both of these trilogies, the sales success of Crash? That still is like the #1 game in the UK.
I think that like children today are probably much too sensitive for Crash Bandicoot, who's just extreme. He's very
Too extreme.
borderline frightening. with how
Spyro skateboards.
Spyro's like he's like a edgy kid for the youth group. Like he's like,
And he's voiced by SpongeBob, so the kids can get familiar
Tom
with
Kenny,
him. Yeah.
here's our Spyro impressions. Hey, it's me, the dragon. I'm on a skateboard. I got to the part where you get on a skateboard, and I was like, oh, I'm in a Go-Gurt commercial. This is peak 90s.
I think I'm very interested to see how this game sells. I think one difference is I hope we don't see more Crash. No offense to Crash fans, but Crash compared to Spyro, Crash is a bad game now.
You're a bad game.
It's also upsetting as a
roasted.
man. He's got like his little.
I understand. But
I will stand.
jorts
I will
on.
stand by this.
He looks like if John Cena was a werewolf.
It's kind of true, actually. But no, I think Crash Bandicoot does not hold up at all in
Why do I invite
2018.
you
I think
onto the
Spyro
show?
does. I don't know why you did. Yeah, I don't think Crash
Is it
holds
because
up.
of all of Crash Bandicoot's politically incorrect views?
Yes, it's 100% that. No, it's because you're running. It's because you know why? I'll tell you why.
It's because Spyro voted for Bernie.
Any game where you are running at the camera is a bad game.
There's a lot of
Okay,
games
I'll
that
tell
do that to this day.
Uncharted 2.
Yep.
Yep.
How dare you talk?
Naughty
Get off
Dog,
this show.
Naughty Dog
Stand by
games
that
do
one.
that to this day.
Yeah.
So that's just
And
that's
I
on
will
Naughty
ping
Dog.
them that for that to this day.
Yeah.
It's part of their
Last of
DNA.
Us, a bad game.
And I want to separate real quick.
Wow.
I'm kidding. don't burn me on the internet. I'm sorry.
Ronnie, please edit out him saying I'm kidding.
I'm editing this.
Damn it, Ronnie, edit it now.
And I will say the Crash Bandicoot remake and the remaster, I think it was lovely and really, really well made. I just don't think that game holds up very well. And I think Spyro does. So between the two, I'd choose more Spyro any day of the week.
And I choose to not have you on the show anymore. But it's been no.
I said so many nice things.
It's
and you guys
okay.
focused on the bad one.
That's how. Welcome to the internet.
What was your argument? You're like, I don't think they should make any games. Like, were you? They shouldn't. Wait, are you saying they should make Crash Bandicoot?
He said if they remake one of these games, or if they could, would you think that they would continue to make more new ones? I don't think I would want to see
you
more
think
new
that
Crash.
Spyro is too sexualized? What you were getting at?
I think that Spyro needs to put on a shirt. It's 2018, and that's all I can say.
But then he wouldn't have any pants on. I think the Crash
Winnie the Pooh
Bandicoot.
does it.
Donald
if
Duck
Winnie
it.
the Pooh
Yeah.
is still humble and nice, and then Spyro can do it.
Winnie the Pooh's theme song is "Humble" by Kendrick Lamar. So that makes sense.
What has happened?
Obviously, you can read more about my thoughts about Spyro Reignited Trilogy on IGN.com. The review is on YouTube.com/IGN as well. Be sure to check it out. And obviously, if there's any more news, Spyro news in the future, we'll keep you updated. It has been a long year since this egg first showed up in the mail to this office.
We were like,
It
what
hasn't
do you
hatched
mean
yet.
a new
It's
Spyro game? I don't believe a minute
I
of
don't
that.
believe that at all.
Hey, I got a question though, real
Yeah.
quick. Did they have? So I was playing Year of the Dragon. You go around collecting all those eggs.
Yeah.
Did they all have names in the original?
Yes.
Are they the same names?
I think so.
Okay. Did all the dragons in the first one have the names?
They had names, but they did not have the level of detail they have. It was like the same
Yeah.
6 dragon models reused over and over. Yeah. So these are all like 100% original.
It was
dragon
like
designs.
Mortal Kombat ninjas, and they just went in and they added like new belts and stuff.
Different
on them.
paints. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, now they're all brand new. So I'm looking forward to them expanding that universe even more.
It's weird that one of the dragons was like in the first one they're all like it's like Mjolnir and Fanfare and stuff, and then you can start collecting eggs. In the third one they're like Vanessa,
Bob,
Craig, Jim,
Claire.
What did you like lose the Norse mythology book?
Dennis.
I think the Insomniac Games team probably just changed a lot from Norse gods to Americans.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on to another release of this week, Fallout 76 coming to PS4. Barrett, you've played a lot of the beta.
Played so much of the beta.
Do you look hollowed right now?
I am an empty man because of how much I've played this game.
Tell me about your general thoughts first off.
It's not good.
Why not?
And that's just my personal opinion. The
All right,
reason
Barrett,
that
why don't you, sorry, you go ahead.
I'm giving a lot of sour hot take today, and that's because I've had 4 hours of sleep. I'm usually not this mean, but today I am going to be. And so the reason that Fallout is interesting in these past games is because of the world that has been built and the characters that live in that world that Bethesda has specifically crafted to live in this world. When you take those two things out and then make it a multiplayer game, I don't know what you don't grab me anymore, and that's just like that's been my frustration. And then I've expected Bethesda jank that you always kind of have to expect those with Fallout games, but then like that with an added level of like, oh, we can't reach the server. You got to just freeze here in the middle of fighting enemies, and then you're going to sit here for 30 seconds. This is like a lot of little things like that frustrate me. But to give it credit where credit's due, like there are places on the map that make you want to go explore, and that's another kind of temple of Fallout. So I will give it that. But the other two things I feel like makes this world feel lifeless and empty, and that bumps me out. And
speaking a little bit to that, like there are interesting areas to explore. Do you feel like some of it is like, does it still retain a lot of the Fallout essence that you've enjoyed in the past? Like what does and doesn't it keep?
I mean, like for what do you mean, like on Gameplay level, it's pretty much the same. Just like the major thing is like VATS is in real time now, which I thought was interesting.
How's that VATS?
And so the way they've reworked VATS is it's all in real time, and you don't actually like really aim anywhere. It'll just give you a percentage of how likely you are to hit an enemy. You could be aiming like this way, like up towards the sky, and like if the enemy is in your frame of reference and it says like 80%, you could shoot up there, and then like 8 times out of 10 it'll hit the enemy or whatnot. It's really weird.
If you're aiming down sights at an enemy without using VATS, are you 100% chance to hit them if they're right in your scope?
I haven't really paid attention to that. If I feel like it has been, so
what I'm asking is,
Yeah.
could VATS potentially make you less likely to hit a thing?
Yes, I believe so. And like the thing is like
new.
a lot of this game is survival based and whatnot, and which I think is a cool I don't think they really implemented on it well, but I think that's a cool idea to have in a Fallout game. And it reminds me of Metal Gear Survive, where you're doing you're kind of you have to eat and drink stuff way too often, and you have to kind of rebuild all this stuff way too often. And the thing with kind of the mechanically is I think all kind of weapons you have to rely more on melee, which I think is interesting.
you-
That's not really a Fallout thing.
Were you playing solo or with other people in the office? Like, what was your experience?
It was mainly solo. I was playing between Xbox and PS4, and Graber and I were on the hunt to do very specific feature stuff, so we didn't really have a lot of time to play together.
Do you think it would be more fun if you played with people?
I have no idea. That actually might be a great question for the UK boys, because I know all of them have been playing together. And I know Brandon Tyrell has also been like playing like on and off with people and just by himself. So I think that could be maybe if you have like a solid group of people that you want to play this game with, it might be worth it. But definitely after the 15 to 20 hours I've played of this beta, I was just like, meh, not for me.
Do you think you'll go back to the full game now that it's out, maybe try to play with people, or do you feel like just the experience you've had with the beta so far? Not really.
Nah, I think I'm soured to this point, and like I'm just not a multiplayer guy. So if that sounds like kind of up your alley, maybe it is like actually a really great kind of like version of this type of genre. But yeah,
Sure.
It's not grabbing me.
Well, we'll also have impressions from Brandon Tyrell, like you mentioned. He did our beta impressions, and I believe he's doing our full review. And Barrett, just why don't you go make a game?
Yeah. Why don't you go make a game? Or why don't you build
Fine.
a house in Fallout 76? Huh? Do you think it's like a fun game to just like screw around in? Because obviously we've seen like I feel like Fallout 4 initially really disappointed me in terms of like being a Fallout game, but clearly that was sort of a chemistry set / sort of toy box for a lot of people to like build stuff in, and people went completely nuts with that. And you'd see like, oh, this guy made a roller coaster or like a Rube Goldberg machine. Do you think like that kind of people would really latch onto this and enjoy that like that level of screwing around with friends? And
I think it depends on like what people can find, because again, I've only had like a limited amount of time. So if there is enough in that world, which I really haven't experienced, there might be a lot of stuff that like the building stuff seems a little more kind of the same of like in Fallout 4. It's just like the building itself is a little more easier and makes way more sense this time around and feels better. Whereas I know like a lot of people's problem with the building in Fallout 4 was like it feels clunky and not intuitive and what's that. And so they have improved on that.
how are the Mothmen?
I've not run into a Mothman.
No?
Oh, that's all I want to play that game for. Is I
Bullshit.
love the Mothman.
What about the giant slothman?
I haven't seen a sloth too.
You're-
I remember seeing that in the trailer. I was like, I'll play this game for the giant sloth man.
Maybe you're just bad at it.
They didn't make a Slothman film with Richard Gere though. Mothman Prophecy is a good movie.
I have no way to move on from that, so we're just going to jump right into our thoughts about Tetris Effect. We talked about the demo a bit last week. The game is out in full. It came out last Friday from when this episode is publishing, and we'll get to all of our thoughts on it in a second. What I want to say, as has been written down on this paper, for the love of God, play Tetris Effect. This game is so good.
This
Can
is
we talk
such a
about
good
this game?
game.
I can't believe how, like, going into the end of the year, if you had told me a new Tetris game would be on my like short list for game of the year, I would not have said, oh yeah, definitely, because I love Tetris, but I just assumed it'd be more Tetris. This feels like so much more. What do you guys think about it, though?
Yeah, seconded. I knew it looked cool. Tetris fundamentally is a cool thing. It's fun to play, but like as far as how much of like a kick in the ass this game would be, the soundtrack is phenomenal. I don't know. It adds enough to keep it engaging in a way that feels new and fresh. I woke up. I played it later than I should have last night, and then I woke up early to play it this morning.
Hell yeah.
And then I desperately resisted playing it at work. Like it's just like I want to go home and play it more of it. It's just there's something about it that just feels like it's both relaxing and enthralling, which is the same could be said about vanilla Tetris, but in this case, it's like paired with a bunch of stuff you haven't seen before. It's just phenomenal, in or out of VR. So.
Yeah. I've been championing this game ever since the beta came out. I was with a bunch of friends just telling them like, oh, game of the year contender, Tetris Effect, like you'll play that. Which I don't want to represent that. Like that's actually going to be, I don't
For you
I don't know.
personally.
I dug myself
okay,
in
Barrett.
for me, it's definitely top 10. Yeah, it's a weird trip. And I'm like, it makes me wonder of like how people experience Tetris for the first time when it originally came out, of like, was it because Tetris has been like such a staple in the industry, of like, were people like this like kind of mind blown about like what this game was, and then now we have this like weird modern millennial version with EDM / Angels and Airwaves like music in it, with like a bunch of dolphins floating in your face and stuff. It's awesome. I love it. I'm delirious
Why'd
right
you
now.
say that like a stepdad? Like, it's awesome.
I love it. It's awesome. So I've had 4 hours of sleep.
Good God.
If I can, because I've played the demo and I've very much enjoyed the demo, but I'd like to play Devil's Advocate because I know that there are going to be
that's
people
a terrible
out
game.
there.
You shouldn't play Devil's Advocate. Play Tetris Effect.
Fair enough, but isn't it just Tetris?
No.
Okay, then why? Because that's what I believe you when you guys are saying that it's more than that, but it is so, from only having played the demo, it's hard for me to understand why it is so much more.
Well, I think the thing is, it's a weird thing to talk about because in the sense of like the actual gameplay, it is still Tetris. It's Tetris with the hold block, which is obviously a controversial thing in Tetris for some people, but it's standard Tetris as you know it in terms of the actual gameplay. But for me, what makes the game better is the way the music and the visuals are integrated into while you're playing. Like, it's not changing the mechanics of the game, but it's new because the experience of it is so much more engaging. Like, it is an overall, the thought process behind all of it is interwoven together.
Yeah, like moving the blocks around like affects how like the noises play into the song. Like there's a level that's purely just like New York City, and it's like the music.
Jazz
It's like
piano.
jazz,
one?
and like all of like moving it around like just naturally fits into the song. And there's a lot of things like that like really play into it. That like just sucks you in for hours, and then it's like 3 a.m. and you're like, what have I done with my life?
I'm 32 years old. It was 11 p.m. No, but like I don't know if this was just sort of perception, but my sense was that like, first of all, like, obviously, like when you drop a block, it makes a tone in the song that you're playing right now. But I feel like there's almost like a rhythm component where when the music speeds up, so do the blocks. Is that
They're usually timed together.
okay? I
yeah.
feel like that wasn't really sold properly in the demo, and it's way more noticeable in the full game. Like there's parts where, and it's like I don't really like rhythm games. I love Tetris, but the music in Tetris, as awesome as it is, isn't really related to the actual gameplay. Whereas in this case, you begin to learn the song, and it affects how you approach the game. And the whole thing is you charge up your Tetris Effect meter, which lets you kind of go into bullet time and like sort of rack up lines, and basically you're slowing down the blocks. So you start to charge that up, and then you save it for the part in the song where it's going to speed up, where you know it's going to get faster, and then suddenly you have to like...
It's like Tetris, but for Guitar Hero fans in a way.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, which is probably why I love it so much.
You have to like go through like there's each area, and like some areas have like 5 different like levels, but it all is like the same Tetris game, and you get like... You remember like, oh, when I get to like when I take out 16 rows, that's when like the song will speed up, and so I have to like maybe just like not even go for Tetris right now, but keep it low because I know it's going to speed up and get crazy and all that.
Yeah, there's like an added layer of strategy to it, and that's in addition to the sort of save block stuff and the Tetris meter and everything, and that's just in sort of the core gameplay. There's also like there's like the journey, which is almost, I guess it's weird to say, it's sort of the Tetris campaign, which is
dope.
It brings you through different tracks and different like sort of environments.
And it's worth it to beat because then you can just watch the levels and not play Tetris.
You just have a theater mode.
Oh, that's really
Yeah.
You get theater mode.
Yeah, you got a theater mode, and you can
beat it, like,
control
right
the
before
song
the
a little
show.
bit.
So not only what I'm hearing is not only is it more than just Tetris, the Tetris isn't even the best part.
I mean, because Tetris is still great, but
It is good.
it's the way the game interacts with your playing of Tetris, excuse me. Because like Mizuguchi, who's behind Tetsuya Mizuguchi, excuse me, who made the game, has made Rez before.
And have any of you played Rez, or a lot of people are also comparing this to Luminous?
Yes, yeah. So what's interesting about the music behind it is that there are, like, everyone's released the soundtrack. There is no soundtrack because the music is so integrated into your play that there are no like official versions of the tracks yet.
Yeah.
Because they haven't mixed like a song per track. Yeah. It's very tied to what you do in the game.
There's also a lot of multiplayer components. Like there's leaderboards, and there's some, what's that weird like global mode thing?
Oh yeah, effects mode, which has a bunch of sub modes in it.
Yeah, there's clearly like a bunch of like weird leaderboards, and there's a thing where you see people sort of in your area, and it's just, it feels like, I don't know, like Tetris kind of poked its head up and looked around and was like, oh, it's 2018. like cracks knuckles, like let's do this. And it was like, it takes full advantage of the VR headset and makes Tetris this like, Kubrickian like monolithic experience that is a psychedelic like shotgun blast of K-hole visuals. So,
and they're doing a cool thing where on the weekends they have these sort of like timed event essentially of like get as many points as you can, and if the whole globe gets to a certain marker by the end of it, something gets unlocked. And for this week, it was like a 1989 old school Tetris area. So that is now unlocked in the game. It disappeared for a lot of people, but if you reach the max level, it becomes permanently unlocked forever. So there's like a whole leveling and like RPG, like light RPG in there.
Also, like typically Tetris, you think of it as like, oh, you play it until you lose. But in this case, there's like
kind of an end goal.
There's like levels.
Yeah.
And so you can be like, oh, if I power through to this, it's gonna like slow down and it's get to the next track and it's a different setting. And that's actually really nice if you it's like, I think it's 36 lines per level, more or less.
36 to, it depends on what difficulty.
Right.
Yeah, it scales.
But it's like you have to like make a certain amount of lines per level, map, whatever you want to call it, stage. And I don't know, if you're like really close to the end and you die, it's like, oh, well, I have to start over at the very beginning. It's like, no, you start over from that level and you start to learn the song better. And then there's the rhythm component to it. So
I would like to see a mode where you have to try to go through every single stage all in a row.
You can with the journey. Like you can just keep going through it.
There's also like
it'll pause you.
Is question mark mode the theater thing? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Yeah. It essentially it'll pause you like there are the 3-level bunch and 5-level bunch. It'll like give you a quick pause in between each of those, but you can just keep going through all of it if you want.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like you'll have those brief intermissions where it's like score update, but yeah,
interesting.
you could just keep continuing.
And it's as the same Tetris game.
What we're getting at here is it's a good
yeah.
Tetris game, and you should play it.
Yes, yeah.
That's sold.
That's
Game
the
of the
point.
year contender, Tetris Effect.
If you thought that like we'd be on an IGN podcast in 2018 being like, yeah, the new Tetris is really good, like
I would not have.
Yeah.
Didn't really see that one coming, but
it is great. It is wonderful. It is out now. You should absolutely play it, especially if you have PSVR. It is wonderful. Of course, before this show ends, though, I'd like to talk about one game that isn't out yet.
Oh, let me put 1 minute
thank
the
you.
clock. All right.
So we're, of course, going to jump into the Kingdom Hearts Minute. Barrett can't believe there's still Kingdom Hearts news coming, and as long as there is still Kingdom Hearts news coming, and even when there isn't, I will keep doing this.
It's going to get worse before it gets better. All right. 3, 2...
Please work with me for a moment because I have to do something. So please narrate while
This is a family show. Jonathan is currently disrobing.
Wow.
He's taking off his tunic and he's putting on.
It's going to take up most of the minute. Oh yeah, I'll spend the minute on
Okay,
this.
you gotta vamp while you're and don't put the thing on the microphone.
It's fine. It's going.
You only have
It's
40
going.
seconds
He's putting
left.
on some sort of a Christmas sweater. He's got 39 seconds left. Wow, look at
I
that.
have a Kingdom Hearts Christmas sweater now, everyone. It is wonderful. I love it so much. It came in the mail today. It is wonderful. But I'm not here to just talk about the Kingdom Hearts sweater that I'm wearing. I'm here to talk about the new Kingdom Hearts Winnie the Pooh trailer that came out this weekend. One, to confirm that Winnie the Pooh is back in the game, which is wonderful. I'm very happy to have that like nice low-key kind of world mixed in with everything, obviously. But they also showed these like crazy bits of what I think the end game are. You see this world that's like clouds and sort of like reflective surfaces and everything with a bunch of Soras running around. I don't know. Sources running around with a bunch of Soras running around. I don't know if that's Kingdom Hearts itself, maybe in this like a new form of it or something, or it's within Sora's heart is one of the theories. I'm very curious to see what that world is like to play. Is that
Well,
the
the
end?
time's up. Yeah, you spent 20 seconds putting on a sweater.
Worth
so.
it. Absolutely worth it.
To find out the thrilling conclusion of Jonathan's 30 seconds on Winnie the Pooh, I'm sure you've got plenty more to say next week.
Oh, yeah. Don't you worry about that. Brian Altano was joking on Twitter that if you just will string all these Kingdom Hearts minutes together, you'll have a full episode of Beyond to listen to.
I hear he's sick. I don't know where I heard that from, but I think I heard he was sick.
Yeah, he's got the Norwegian fever.
Gotcha.
He's in Norway.
Okay.
That's not a joke. He went to Norway to shoot a travel show.
Okay.
But when he gets back, he'll probably be sick of working. So he will maybe take a day. I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, we'll find out.
I don't know where you were going with that one.
That's where we went. Either way, this has been Beyond episode 567. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Of course, when we're not on Beyond, we are on IGN.com. You can head there to see all the other wonderful things we write, produce, view, just in general do. Barrett, where can people find you, though, when you're not on Beyond?
You can find me on the internet at SadBoyBarrett.
Max, where can people find you?
It's just Max Scoville.
And
Tom?
At Tom R. Marks on Twitter.
And I am at JM Dornbush. You can find me there talking, obviously, more about Kingdom Hearts. We'll have plenty more to come in the weeks ahead of this
What are we
crazy
doing
year.
next week? In
We're
honor
gonna
of the
be
holidays.
we're gonna be doing a special sort of episode. Obviously, next week in America is Thanksgiving, so given that it's going to be a bit of a different week, we thought we'd try a bit of a different show. So please look forward to that.
The Thanksgiving special.
Yes, I've always loved sitcoms with holiday specials, so I figured why not have Beyond have a holiday special?
Hour of ASMR eating.
That's turkeys that we did.
But
that
there,
in the
that,
show.
that,
yeah.
that was
People
actually
were
an
not
episode of
happy.
Beyond.
Oh my.
That's when I didn't produce the show. So.
One of the most
I
controversial
still feel
episodes.
sorry about that, everybody. Sorry.
Don't apologize.
Apologize for nothing. And of course, as we mentioned last week, but just keep it in mind, keep December 10th open if you were in the San Francisco Bay Area. If you're around, just keep that day, that evening open. We will have
Keeping
more.
it vague for now.
We'll have more information for you, hopefully to come soon. But with that, thank you all so much for joining me. And of course, Beyond.
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 There's always that little awkward, like, oh, we're
Yep.
doing this?
Yep.
We're doing this. All right.